So we want to add a modal. Conveniently, if we have a look at the official documentation, there is a modal component we can use. So let's do that. First of all, I will create a new component which should wrap this modal. I'll name it place detail because it will essentially show some details about the selected place. Place detail JS. In there, I'll create a functional component, place detail, which receives some props and then returns some JSX. I will therefore import React from React. We need that to render JSX and transform it correctly. And then I will export this as the default. Now I also need to import something from React Native, of course, and that something obviously is the modal. So in here, let's simply return a modal as JSX. We probably need a bit more though. Probably also want to have a view to structure our content in the modal. We want to output an image. We probably want to render a text, so the name of the place we selected. And I want to have buttons so that we can also close the modal or delete the element. So in the modal, let's add a view. Always a good starting point if you want to structure something. That view here will in the end hold my image. Then it should hold the text, which outputs the name of the place we're looking at. And then I want to have two buttons. I'll wrap these in a separate view to make styling them and positioning them a bit easier. So here I will have two buttons, which are self-closing elements. Don't forget that. So I get props and I expect that these props hold the information about the place we're viewing. So I probably have a place name I can output on my props. The image should be able to fetch the source from props place image. And yeah, well, the buttons will take care about these later. So let's make sure that we can actually view the modal. For that, let's import it in app.js in our app container. There I will import place detail from. Now let's reach out to source, components, place detail, and there the place detail file. Now I will render my custom place detail component in the JSX code here inside of my container. So here, place detail. Now for place detail to display something, I need to pass place image and place name on my props object. So let's go back and, well, how do we pass something? For that, we need to know which element we selected, so on which element we clicked in our list. So the first step could be to rename onItemDeleted to maybe onItemSelected. Sounds more appropriate because we're not instantly deleting the item anymore by just clicking on it. So in the place list, let's make sure that this prop is renamed to onItemSelected. No more onItemDeleted. Back in the app.js file, we have onItemSelected and we probably want to execute the place selected handler here and not the place deleted handler. So let's rename place deleted handler to place selected handler and I'll comment out the old code for now. So in place selected handler, I want to kind of store the information which place was selected so that we can pass it to the place detail, which holds our modal. Therefore, I'll go to the state of my app container and I'll add a selected place, which initially is null because we have no place selected. In place selected handler, I'll then call this set state. And here, I want to set the selected place equal to the place which has this key. So therefore, I'll use the different set state syntax where we get the previous state, then have a function, and in that function body, we return the object we want to merge with the state. So there, the selected place will use the previous state. There, we'll have a look at all our places, and we'll run the find method on it. Find is a default JavaScript array method, which finds one element in an array that fulfills a certain criteria. The criteria is passed in a function we pass to find. That function will be executed on every element in places in that array, so to say. So here we'll have a look at every place, and we have to return true if it's the object we were looking for, false if it's not the object. I want to return true if the key of the place we're running the function on right now is equal to the key I receive in place selected handler, because then it's the key I'm interested in. Like that. So now we have a function to actually select a place when we click on it. I now need to pass this information to place detail. So here I will pass selected place maybe, and this should be this state selected place. So this new property we added to the state. In place detail, I now need to use that information. Here we output props, and we don't have place image and place name as it turns out. Instead we have a selected place. So we can output selected place image and name, like that. We will run into one issue with that though. Initially, selected place is null. The place detail is always rendered though. And I want to always render it because I want to control how the modal is displayed differently and not by rendering this or not rendering this. So, since this is always rendered, we even try to access place image and place name when selected place is null. So we would get an error. An easy workaround is to use a ternary expression here and check if prop selected places is set. And only if it is set, then we will reach out and access place image. Otherwise, I will simply pass null as an image source. Or alternatively, that is maybe the more elegant solution, we can leave it as it is, but in our modal code here, in our modal JSX code, we render image and text conditionally, only if we do have values. So I'll replace the parentheses here with curly braces to have a real function body in our functional component. And then in there, we should return something, some JSX. That is the JSX we returned previously to. But before we return, I now will create a new variable which I'll name modal content, which is null initially. But if props selected place is set, if it's not null, then modal content will actually be my image and text JSX here. So let's wrap this in parentheses like this. And here we would get an error because we have adjacent JSX elements. We could fix it with some auxiliary component, but here I will simply use a view. Now with that, we can render modal content in our modal, and it will only get rendered if selected place is set. With that, let's save all files and go back, and yeah, we see a modal now. That's great. If we reload, we even get an error because our buttons don't have titles. So let's set titles. Let's set this one to delete. And here on the second button, let's set it to close. We now save this. We reload. We have a modal with the two buttons and nothing else. And here on iOS, this even goes under the status bar. So our modal needs some styling. The button do too. The delete button should be red. And the cool thing about the built-in button is we can simply add the color prop and set this to red, or any hex code which represents a color. Now we got this as red, but still I want to change the layout here. For that, I will actually import style sheet, as we did a couple of times before too, and I will create my styles constant and use style sheet create here to create a view for the modal, maybe a modal container, so some styles for the modal I want to say. And here, let's at least add a margin of, let's say 22 pixels, so that it doesn't go under the status bar anymore. So with that, if we now assign this to the view inside the modal, so set the style equal to styles modal container, and we save this, now this looks better. Obviously, the issue is the modal is always open, so we got no way of selecting an element. That is the other part. I told you that I want to control the visibility of the modal differently. I want to control it with a property on this modal component, the visible property. By default, it's always visible, but we can bind this to a boolean. And here I want to bind it to props selected place. I want to check if that's not null. Only in this case, the modal should be visible. So now you see the modal is not visible. I can add a place, and now if I click on this place, now we see the modal. Would be nice to get an animation for that though. We can do this with another property. We can set the animation type on the modal, and we can set it to either slide, fade, or none. None is the default. I want to use slide here. So let's save this file. Let's try this again. Let's reload our app here. Let's add a place again, and let's click this. Now it slides up. Closing and deleting won't work. Another issue is that we don't really see our content, do we? We don't see the image, we don't see the text. Now, the reason for this is very simple. If we have a look at what we access on our selected place, it's place image and place name. Let's have a look at our app container, what we set. There, when we add a new place, we actually set name and image, not place name and place image. So let's go back to our detail and change this to access name here and image, like this. Now with that in place, we now reload this and we add Munich here. Let's now click this again. Now we see Munich, but the image is missing. Well, it's missing because we didn't set a styling. And I told you, for network images, images loaded over the internet, you need to set a style with width and height. So let's add such a style for the place image here. Let's set a width. And let's say we want to have a width of maybe 100%. And a height of 200 pixels. So now with that, we can go up there and set this to styles, place image. Now if we save all files and we go back, this looks much better. Now we get the image here looking nice, and we got our text. We can improve the styling of the text a little bit, in my opinion, though. Let's add some styling for it. So the place name. Let's maybe add a font weight of bold. That is possible. Now to center it, let's also add text align center here. And let's also maybe increase the font size to 28 pixels. And let's save this. Now let's assign the place name style here to our text. Styles, place name. Let's save this file. And this looks pretty good to me. You could also add a margin to the title if you wanted, but I want to go with that approach. Now let's work on the delete and close buttons here. Now these can be hooked up with on press. For the first one, I want to reach out to some prop. Let's name it on item deleted. For the second one, on press should trigger some method passed through a property named on modal closed, let's say. So these are the two props I will expose to the outer world so that the outer world can listen to the events happening on these buttons in the modal. The outer world, of course, is my app container. So in there, I got place detail. I now will listen to on item deleted here and execute the this place deleted handler. And I got the on modal closed prop, which I just created inside the modal component. Here I will execute this modal closed handler. So that's my new code with these two prop handlers added. Now let's add the two methods. First, I'll add the place deleted handler here. And then I'll also add the modal closed handler. Both don't need any arguments. Now, for closing the modal, I will simply call setState and set the selected place back to null. That's all. This will already ensure that I can, well, close the modal. Because if it's null, then the logic inside the place detail component will close the modal. Because we check for this not being null here. The place deleted handler is, of course, basically using the code we had in our little app here before, the one I commented out. So let's paste it in here and comment it back in. And you might think that we need the key of the item which should be deleted. But keep in mind that we have the selected place stored in the state of the app container. So in the end here I can just say our new places are simply the old places filtered by a place where the key is not equal to the key of the selected item. So of previous state selected place key. These keys should not be equal. If they are, that's the item I want to delete, so the one I want to filter out. With that, I got that in place. One other thing I want to do is, I of course want to set selected place to null here too, to also close the modal and reset that. Now let's save this and let's see if it works. Let me retry this app and let's add Munich again. Beautiful beach in Munich, by the way. And let's click close. Looks good. Let's click delete. It's gone. Now let's also add San Francisco here. Let's click on that. Yes, it has the same image, but that's on purpose here. Looks good. We see the details of San Francisco and now of Munich. Image was a bit slow, but it did load. Now let's delete San Francisco. We still can open Munich, of course. So that's all working. If we try the same on Android, we do get a warning though, that the prop on request close is marked as required but not found. On our modal, we need to pass this prop. We can also see this in the official documentation. On request close is only relevant for TV operating systems or Android. There we basically have this physical back button. And if that is pressed, on request close is executed. So we need to tell our application what to do when this happens. And of course here I want to do the same as happens when I click the close button. I want to execute the method which we receive on our on modal closed prop. So let's bind this here. And with that, if we go back to our Android app and reload, let's see this. Let's add Munich here. Let's click Munich. We see the modal, we see the buttons here too. I'll leave them like this for now. If I click the back button, we close the modal. So we do the same as when we click the close button. Deleting also works here. So with that, we got a working modal in both applications. Let's see what else we can do.